Good day, everyone. Standing before you is Hashita Nasigoli from Group 4, who will be presenting on two financial scandals, the Lehman Brothers and the Bernie Madoff financial scandal. The first scandal we'll be presenting on is the Lehman Brothers scandal. This was a powerful investment bank whose downfall in 2008 became a symbol of global financial crisis. The second one we'll be presenting on is the Bernie Madoff scandal that happened in 2008. This was the largest Ponzi scheme in history. This was when a trusted financier deceived thousands of investors and cost the world over $500 billion. I will now be handing over to my colleague to continue with the presentation.
I'll be taking over the overview and the principles or ethics code breached in the Lehman Brothers financial scandal. Lehman Brothers was a global financial firm founded in 1850, specializing in investment, banking, and real estate. It collapsed in September 2008 with $619 billion in debt, the largest bankruptcy in US. The downfall was caused by risky investment in subprime mortgages, excessive leverage, misleading accounting practices like Repo 105. Its failure triggered a global financial crisis, which highlighted the need for stronger financial regulations and transparency. The ethical codes breached in the Lehman Brothers financial scandal. The first one being transparency. Transparency refers to the clear, accurate, and timely disclosure and financial information and risks. In Lehman Brothers case, the firm failed to provide a truthful view of its financial position. Through practices like the Repo 105, it moved billions of dollars in debt off its balance sheet before reporting to investors. This lack of transparency marks the company's true financial risks and misleads stakeholders. The absence of open communication and honest reporting played a critical role in the erosion of market trust, which ultimately contributed to the firm's collapse. The second code breached is integrity. The firm prioritized short-term profits over ethical decision-making, compromising the trust of investors and stakeholders. Integrity involves adhering to ethical codes and doing what is right, even when it's not legally required. Lehman's use of accounting loopholes to hide liabilities and present a false sense of stability showed a disregard for ethical conduct. Instead of addressing the underlying problems, the firm prioritized short-term appearance and investor confidence over long-term sustainability. This violation of ethical principle demonstrated a breakdown in corporate integrity, undermining the company's credibility and reputation in the market. The last code will be accountability. Executives failed to take responsibility for the firm's risk strategies and ignored warning signs of financial instability. Accountability means being responsible for one's actions and decisions, particularly those that affect others. At Lehman Brothers, senior executives and decision makers failed to take responsibility for the firm's growing exposure to risk and for its deceptive accounting methods. There was also insufficient oversight from the board of directors and regulations. The lack of accountability on both the individual and organizational level allowed poor practices to continue unchecked, leading to catastrophic consequences for the firm and the global financial system. I'll now be heading over to the next colleague.
Now I'll be moving on to the social impact of the scandal. We have the foreclosures and poverty. The crisis led to mass property repossession, leading to families becoming homeless and devastated. Erosion of trust. Public trust in financial institutions and regulatory bodies was severely damaged, leading to increased calls for transparency and stricter regulations. Moving on to prolonged economic strain. The effects lingered for years with slow economic recovery, reduced consumer spending, and increased inequality. We'll be moving on to the economic impact of the scandal. We have market instability. The scandal undermined confidence in financial institutions, and this led to reduced stock markets and less investors investing in the near future. We have unemployment. The crisis led to massive job losses, including the Lehman itself, which had to lay off 26,000 employees worldwide. We will be now talking about the global financial crisis. Lehman's collapse triggered a domino effect leading to the 2008 financial crisis. It caused a credit freeze, disrupted global markets, and wiped out trillions of dollars in economic. Now I will be handing over to my colleague.
I'll be taking you through external and internal factors that led to the scandal. These are the factors that account for the failure of the Lehman company, where poor management accompanied by the unethical actions led to the scandal. The internal factors. Corporate culture. They wanted to remain at the top, so they enabled unethical practices. They resorted to short-term gains instead of long-term gains, but in the process, they forgot the risk of doing so. This leads us to our next point, deceptive practices. They used window dressing presentation, showing how they lack integrity. They used auditors, the Repo 105, and tactics to mask the liability and portray a healthy environment for the investors. What is the Repo 105? It is simply a measure employed by firms to raise short-term funds at a wholesale rate by pledging their long-term assets to improve their liquidity position. Next point, weak risk management. They lacked due care. To reduce conflict of interest, they failed to separate commercial banking and investment banking. I'll be taking you through the external factors. Market competition. They wanted to keep their prestige by engaging in high-risk strategies, but in order to do this, they had the intention to be in a high-leverage sector. Number 2, regulatory lapses. The policies or the regulations that could have avoided the unethical practices went there. That is why the scandal was there. The last point, economic environment, the primary bust of housing bubble. Also, the bank packaged loans and sold investors who were hungry for high returns. Thank you. My colleague will take over.
I'll be taking over the mitigation recommendations for the Lehman Brothers collapse. Firstly, we have regulatory measures. Inadequate oversight allowed Lehman Brothers to engage in risky practices without the sufficient scrutiny. Strengthening the role of regulators will provide the necessary checks to prevent excessive risk-taking and ensure compliance with the ethical standards. Now I'll move on to transparency requirements. The Lehman Brothers employed accounting tricks, such as Repo 105 transactions, to hide debt from their balance sheet. Mandating transparent reporting will prevent such deceptive practices, ensuring that investors and regulators have a true picture of a firm's financial health. Now I will move on to organizational measures. Under organizational measures, we have corporate governance. This is all about strong governance frameworks that are vital for accountability. Establishing independent boards and clearer accountability measures will ensure that leadership is responsible for their actions and decisions. Risk management.
Lehman Brothers lacked effective risk management systems that could have identified and mitigated the risks associated with their high leverage and exposure to subprime mortgages. Developing robust risk management frameworks would allow organizations to anticipate and respond to potential threats before they escalate into crisis. Now I will move on to the cultural measures. Promote integrity. The culture at Lehman Brothers prioritized short-term profits over long-term stability, leading to unethical decision-making. Fostering a corporate culture that values ethical behavior would encourage employees to prioritize integrity, reducing the likelihood of reckless practices. Secondly, reward ethical practices. The lack of incentives for ethical behavior contributed to a culture of risk-taking. By rewarding individuals and teams who demonstrate ethical conduct, companies can reshape their culture and reinforce the importance of integrity over short-term gains. In conclusion, the Lehman Brothers crisis highlighted critical failures in regulatory oversight, corporate governance, and organizational culture. By implementing these mitigation strategies, we can create a more resilient financial system and prevent future crises. Now, we will move to the next scandal, which is the Bernie Madoff of 2008. Thank you.
Hi, I'm going to be talking about the Bernie Madoff scandal that happened in the year 2008. So Bernie Madoff, who was the owner of Bernie L. Madoff Investment Securities, planned a massive Ponzi scheme that defrauded investors of about $65 billion by falsely promising consistent high returns and exploiting financial trust. So basically, Bernie Madoff was pretending to run a proper investment firm. He was telling clients that he has a reliable trading strategy, showing them fake financial statements with consistent returns, even when the markets were down, which attracted a lot of people. He would get new investors money to pay earlier investors money, which made it seem like the investments were working, but in actual fact they weren't. Now I'm going to be talking about the ethical principles that were breached in this scandal. The first one was integrity. By falsely promising high investment returns, misrepresenting them and deceiving investors, Madoff violated ethical principle of honesty in financial dealings. He also breached the ethical principle of due care. As a financial professional, Madoff is expected to act with diligence and due care, but his deliberate mismanagement of client funds and the failure to uphold fiduciary responsibilities violated this principle. Thank you, and I'll be giving it to the next speaker.
I'll be taking over from the social impact of the scandal. Charities and financial institutions that had invested in this company experienced bankruptcy, leading to a shutdown of these charities, affecting people who were depending on them. Next, we have psychological distress, as people had lost their investment and some decided to committing suicide. Then we have loss of trust in financial systems and the investment community, which caused the ripple effect in financial advisors. Moving on to economic impact, we have regulatory changes as the scandal prompted reforms in financial regulations to prevent similar cases from happening in the future. Moving on, we have loss of trust in financial markets, which led to multiple withdrawals, leading to firms going out of business. But then we have the Ponzi scheme, which resulted in losses of about $65 billion, where people lost their life savings. And I'll now be handing over to my colleague.
And I'll be continuing on to talk about the external factors that had enabled the scandal. Security oversight. The Security and Exchange Commission provided inadequate oversight. Then we have the economic challenges that had also enabled Madoff, example being the dot-com bubble collapse and the financial crisis of 2008, which had investors giving Madoff more attention. We also have the Bernie Madoff's reputation. As Bernie was the Nasdaq chairman, investors got to be more confident and trust in him, giving him more ammunition to enable this whole scandal. Internal factors that had enabled the scandal. First, we have lack of transparency. Bernie Madoff was very strict with his control of the accounts, making it impossible for any oversight to happen. Then we have internal accountability. Employees were either unaware of this or were directly involved in this, making it or adding ammunition to this whole scandal. Thirdly, we have Bernie Madoff's charming personality. With his charming leadership skills, he was able to evade security, making it quite easy for him to proceed with this whole scandal. And now I'll be giving it to my next colleague.
Now, I will move on to the mitigation recommendations for the Bernie Madoff's financial scandal. Firstly, we have increased regulatory audits. Regulators like the SEC should conduct more frequent audits on large financial institutions. The importance of frequent audits. Firstly, the regular audits can help detect irregularities and suspicious activities before they escalate into larger issues. By increasing the frequency of audits, regulatory bodies can ensure compliance and transparency, as well as promote accountability among financial institutions. The SEC had multiple opportunities to investigate Madoff's operations but failed to act decisively. More frequent and thorough audits could have uncovered the Ponzi scheme earlier, potentially saving investors from devastating losses. This case highlights the need for a proactive approach in regulatory oversight. Secondly, we have improved accounting standards. Accounting standards like the GAAP and the IFRS should be improved to prevent loopholes that allow balance sheet manipulation. Strengthening accounting standards standards can help eliminate ambiguities that allow companies to manipulate financial statements. Clearer guidelines would reduce the chances of misrepresentation and increase the reliability of financial reporting. Madoff was able to mislead investors and regulators through complex and opaque accounting practices. By improving the GAAP and the IFRS standards, we can prevent manipulation and ensure that financial reports genuinely reflect a company's performance, thereby protecting investors. Thirdly, we have education of investors. Investors should be educated about the risks of complex financial instruments. Providing education on the nature and risks associated with complex financial products can empower investors to make informed decisions. This initiative can help them critically assess ratings and reports rather than relying blindly on them. In conclusion, the Bernie Madoff scandal underscores the critical need for enhanced regulatory audits, improved accounting standards, and better investor education. Implementing these recommendations can help create a more transparent and accountable financial environment, reducing the risks of similar scandals in the future. Thank you, and this is the end of our presentation.